Hello. So the idea of shared leadership is something that many researchers are investigating. A current study in 2016 was to determine the effect of humility and the dynamics of a team in creating a shared leadership environment. In other words, what criteria, what dynamics were in place to create a more conducive environment. So the researchers administered a survey of Taiwanese professionals with an average group size of about 4.5, and there were certain criteria that they had to follow. It had to be a project-based, professional, self-managing work team who were held accountable and supervised by a manager. Now, the survey instrument that they used was a quantitative survey which measured different qualities such as leadership, humility, shared leadership, the task performance, the personality types of team members, and the team performance. This was measured through a 5-point Likert scale. Now, the survey followed a time lag design in gathering data. In other words, they administered it 2 different times. So the first time it was administered, team members were measured. Team members measured the humility of their supervisor, and they self-evaluated themselves to determine how proactive they were. Several months later, 5 months later, a second survey was administered, and what it did is it measured leadership structure and the performance of their teammates. It also gave opportunities for the leaders or the formal leaders in these organizations to measure the performance of their team. And so to analyze the data, an ANOVA test was used. And if you're not familiar with an ANOVA test, it's also called as an analysis of variance. So an ANOVA test is very similar to a t-test in the sense that you have to calculate and compare the mean or the average between groups. But with an ANOVA test, you're testing the mean among more than 2 groups. So in this instance, ANOVA was used, and it was used to determine whether the responses differed among the teams and the teams in the industries that they were in. They found that the p-value was less than 0.05 for each of the values, and really what that means is that there's no significant differences across the different types of teams that were observed. So no matter what industry they were in, the results were consistent. So the study found some interesting things. They found that leadership thrives in environments with this criteria. They have humble leaders who are willing to utilize the strengths of the team, and the team members are very proactive in their nature. It's welcome in this type of environment. And when team members feel that their teammates are very competent and highly capable, this is where self-management thrives. So they also found that shared leadership has a very positive impact on team performance as well. But we have to be careful because there's several limitations to this particular study. One is that this studied the relationship between formal team leaders and team members. So informal leaders were not necessarily included in this. And it studied humility and shared leadership, but there's other factors and characteristics of leadership that could potentially be studied. Probably the biggest thing was that this occurred in Taiwan. Now, shared leadership is emphasized in many Eastern cultures like Taiwan. However, in cultures like the United States and in European countries, shared leadership is often not emphasized the way it is in these Eastern cultures. It could be because of the cutthroat nature of many businesses and the high accountability that we have our leaders ingrained to do. But it was a very interesting story and has some very interesting questions that we may want to consider when it comes to shared leadership.